Do we have a quorum? Okay. Give me 30 seconds. Okay.
And we.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Can we check audio? Is audio good before we get started? Can everybody hear us okay? Yes, good. Okay, Adrian, I'm ready.
Great.
Okay. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is East Bay Community Energy meeting for Wednesday, May 17th. Most of us are in person, but we also have members participating remotely, and their locations are listed on the agenda, which was published in advance. If you would like to participate, there's also the information to participate via Zoom that is listed on the agenda as well. And we will now start with the roll call, please.
Great, thank you. Albany. Here. Berkeley. Oh, before we begin, we should swear in our new members, our new alternates.
Okay, how many do we have?
We have 3 alternates. Kimberly Wormsley from Stockton,
Okay,
Councilmember Ramsey, and Councilmember Kadri.
I think we did Kadri already. Is Kadri? No, I'm sorry, we haven't. Okay, hi. Okay, yes. Is there anybody else?
Yes, Councilmember Ramsey from Piedmont.
Okay.
And Councilmember Kadri from Dublin.
Okay,
Great. If I could have you raise your hand and repeat after me. Thank you. I, your name.
I, Kashif Kadri,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States,
and I will
bear true faith
I will bear truth
and allegiance
in allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California.
and the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely
That I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you very much. I'm about to enter. Thank you very much.
thank you, Clark, and welcome to our new members. We're happy to have you here, and we'll go ahead and start the roll call.
Great, thank you. I'll start from the beginning.
Sure.
Albany. Here. Berkeley.
Here.
Dublin.
Wait, Dublin is here.
Thank you. Emeryville. Here. Fremont. Hayward.
Here.
Livermore. Newark. Here. Oakland. Piedmont. Here. San Leandro. Here. Stockton.
Present.
Thank you. Tracy. Here. Union City. Community Advisory Committee.
Here.
Pleasanton.
Present.
Alameda County.
Present.
We have quorum.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to ask our member from Newark, Jorgens, to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the
To the
flag
flag of the United States
of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty.
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to weigh in on items under the purview of East Bay Community Energy, but not specifically on the agenda. There will be an opportunity for public comments under specific agenda items. Do we have any general public comments?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Any
We-
speaker card?
We do have one hand raised.
Okay.
Jessica Tovar, recognized for 2 minutes.
Hello, everyone. This is Jessica Guadalupe Tovar with the East Bay Clean Power Alliance. And I wanted to speak to the local development business plan and the history behind that roadmap. If you didn't know, back in 2016, the Alameda County Board of Supervisors allocated $500,000 towards a roadmap for how East Bay Community Energy can roll out community benefits over time using the revenues from the program, so that the program's not just selling the community electricity, but also that EBCE would be investing over time in the energy resilience and energy needs of the community. Within the local development business plan, you have programs on energy efficiency, how to reduce our demand for more electricity, reduce our consumption. Also electrification of transportation, of buildings, community innovation grant funds, how to incentivize building out local solar, where to add additional like wind within the county. And, most importantly, how to provide that seed funding to the community to do community innovation. And I want to highlight that the community has not seen community innovation grants be granted since 2019. And so it's very important that we replenish, the funding for programs that are investments in shared, for example, shared public transportation, shared solar, so that people who've been shut out of the clean energy economy can actually benefit from actually having, building energy resilience in the community, and that these investments are not just reaching people with upfront capital. Clean power to the people. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. There are no further hands raised at this time.
Okay, and I just want to note that we did receive a public comment letter from the Sierra Club dated May 10th, and I believe staff did respond on May 16th. Could that letter, if it hasn't already been shared to the entire board, the response, can that please be shared to all board members?
Absolutely. Would you like me to read it into the public record?
Sure.
The response, this is the response from staff.
Yes, correct.
But I'll read the letter. Staff provided a response to the letter from Chance Cutrano, the chair of the Sierra Club of San Francisco, to his May 10th letter titled CPUC Resolution E5258 EBCE fines for failing to meet resource adequacy procurement requirements. Staff response is as follows. Dear Mr. Cutrano, thank you for Sierra Club of San Francisco Bay's inquiry dated May 10, 2023. In your letter, you asked about CPUC Resolution E-5258 and the penalties EBCE incurred for underprocurement in the California Public Utilities Commission Resource Adequacy Program. Before turning to the penalties described in Resolution E-5258, some background in the RA program may be helpful. RA is a form of capacity as opposed to energy. Paying for RA means, in essence, paying for a generator to be available to generate rather than to actually generate. The RA program requires jurisdictional load-serving entities like EBCE, LSCs, to procure CPUC-determined amounts of RA qualified generation capacity. The CPUC determines these amounts annually. The CPUC will assess penalties to LSCs unable to procure their requirement of RA, whether due to market scarcity, illiquidity, or resources being economically withheld. There are, quote, backstop RA procurement mechanisms that kick in when an LSC is short on RA, short quotes, therefore ensuring a reliable grid. The grid operator can obtain additional capacity via its FERC-approved authority to obtain resources for reliability purposes. The availability of resources for CPM designation serves to demonstrate that resources had been withheld from the bilateral RA market for artificial purposes. The quote CPM price is set by regulation rather than the market. It could be well below, the market price. 2021 and 2022 saw significant tightening in the RA market. Consequently, there were times when EBCE could not buy all of the RA it needed. Counterintuitive as it may seem, though incurring these penalties actually saved EBCE customers, let me read that again. Counterintuitive as it may seem, though, incurring these penalties actually saved EBCE customers money. The cost of penalties plus backup through the CAISO were less expensive than the alternative of buying RA at the prevailing market prices. EBCE wishes to clarify for Sierra Club San Francisco Bay that RA penalties were in lieu of procurement of RA, and therefore the cost of the penalties were equal to or less than the price EBCE would have paid for RA. And as a result, the payment of penalties did not have the effect of raising EBCE's procurement costs, nor did they have a negative impact on customer rates and funding for EBCE's customer programs. EBCE appreciates Sierra Club San Francisco Bay's continued support as we accelerate the transition to clean and renewable energy in a manner that is sustainable for our diverse customers. Sincerely, Marie Fonda, Vice President of Power Resources.
Thank you, Clerk, for reading that into the record. I have a few comments also with respect to Mr. Tom Kelly has sent us communication and has also spoken in public comments and our executive meeting as well as this monthly meeting. This is with respect to the content level for specifically for Bright Choice. So just wanted to respond that the largest source of emissions in EBCE's portfolio is power content from emitting generation sources, and for Bright Choice, this is unspecified power. Unspecified electricity is not purchased for Bright Choice or content purposes, but is reflective of the balance of carbon-free electricity purchases, its renewable and total sales. The second factor influencing the plan-wide emissions is renewable content from PCC2 RECs. This is due to a change in the California Power Content Reporting and Emissions Counting methodology that adds an emissions factor equivalent to unspecified system power, despite these resources being by and large solar, wind, and hydro. These two factors, unspecified power and PCC2 RECs, have a pronounced impact on EBCE relative to our unique size and demographic, and largely due to EBCE's decision to decline the nuclear portion of the carbon-free allocation, resulting in a greater portion of annual procurement coming from unspecified power and PCC2 RECs that would be necessary had the nuclear allocation been accepted. Regulatory changes to power content reporting methodology, specifically AB 1110, making imported renewables from outside of California no longer emissions free and historically low hydroelectric output due to drought. Meeting the approved 2030 zero emissions electricity target translates to necessary annual reduction in both plan-wide emissions and unspecified power. This is accomplished through year-over-year increases in California generated renewable electricity and carbon-free procurement for Bright Choice. EBCE's targets are then further reviewed on an annual basis to evaluate the potential to accelerate existing targets, and will propose increase to approved targets whenever possible. So just wanted that to be read in for the record. And do we have any more public comments? I don't see anyone. We do, okay.
Tom Kelly.
Okay, sorry, should have probably waited. I apologize, Mr. Kelly.
Great.
Go ahead and speak.
Thank you. You're recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Adrian. I just wanted to point out that CEO Chazet made a similar comment about the resource adequacy issue at the CAC meeting. So, and his comment essentially said that EBCE customers were better off because he thought the cost of actually purchasing the RA that we were obliged to would cost about $10 million. And so paying a fine of fines amounting to 6 point some amount was, a better deal for EBCE customers. But I would like to point out that the other issue with that is the CPUC has delayed the enrollment of the city of Stockton into EBCE until at least January 2025, and it could be later if EBCE continues to fail to fulfill its RA obligations. So this to me is just another excuse that EBCE offers when it is unable to comply with its obligations under the CPUC or its obligations to ratepayers, for example, by purchasing buildings that they no longer intend to inhabit, offering gifts to Children's Hospital, for example. These are all things about the management of EBCE that I wish and hope the board would look into and be concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you. There is no further public comment.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see anyone in the room for public comment. We're now going to move into closed session. So for members that are participating remotely, you should log off from this Zoom link and log into the closed session link, which I believe has already been sent to everyone. And we will relocate to another room and adjourn the public meeting to come back after closed
Is she already in there? I'll be, all that good stuff.
She's ready. That's it.
Great.
No worries today.
Just to do that.
Do you mind?
But I actually, so not something, there are two things I want to talk to you about, so maybe
Adrian,
So are you up next year?
Let's check.
Cooking again?
I think so. I'm trying not to, I always say I try not to think that far.
Next year will be here fast.
Yeah, it's getting a lot closer, so I have to start thinking about it soon.
Yeah.
I think so.
What do you,
Uh,
are you, I used to be the policy director at Housing California. I haven't been for 9 years now. Yeah. I worked at Cromwell Justice. So I was a long time houser, so. Excellent. Yeah.
It's good enough. The government makes
Yeah.
my.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure it does.
Are you
I always said for a long time, I want to be the Sacramento. I always said I was dartboard or wanted poster for League of Cities for a long time. They hated me coming with all my, everything from affordable housing, you know, like financing and tax bills and bond measures that we have for the state and all the homelessness and tenants' rights stuff. And they're just, Dan, I don't know if you knew that Dan Carey was the lobbyist for the League of Cities on the housing.
Except what yeah, perhaps, yeah, perhaps.
I got elected. I wrote the league was like.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm gonna call this meeting back to order. We're just returned from closed session, and I'm gonna ask council to please make an announcement for item number 4 or number 5.
We have nothing to report out of closed session.
Thank you so much. And before we proceed, can everyone hear us okay that's participating remotely? Perfect. Thank you so much. And now we'll move on to consent agenda. These are items 6 through 13. Is there a request to pull an item? Is there any requests?
Motion to approve.
Okay.
I'll second it, subject to pulling the item on e-bikes, $10 million. I just wanted to understand that a little bit better.
That's number 9, correct?
Number 9, I believe.
Okay, so there is, well, let's go ahead and pull that item first before we do the roll call vote. And let me ask also if there's public comments on consent agenda items. These are items number 6 through 13. Do we have any public comments?
There are no hands raised for public comment.
Okay, thank you. And item number 9, did you have a specific question, Member Gonzalez, or did you want staff to give a quick update?
I'm trying to understand, so I saw a reference to some additional grant funding. It says that $10 million money from our, I'll just go from net income that would otherwise go to net income, or is it that, that's probably not the best form. I'm trying to figure out the source of that $10 million.
Absolutely, yeah. So $6 million, $2 million from last year's budget, $2 million in this year's budget, and $2 million, subject to board approval next year, $2 million from next year's budget. So $6 million is funded from what would otherwise be net income. And then $4 million is coming from ACTC as a co-funding on top of our funds.
And the 32nd description on the which board priority or agency priority does this align?
Transportation electrification, this alliance. So when we in the last couple of years, when we've sort of been developing our transportation electrification strategy, we have sort of 2 areas of emphasis: infrastructure and mobility. So the infrastructure to charge vehicles, and then modes of mobility. And within infrastructure is somewhat. So we have things we can do better. Mobility. There are really 3 modes of mobility and areas of emphasis: medium and heavy duty, your trucks, light duty. And then, so I would say initially the focus has been medium and heavy duty and light duty, and then through input from the board, there was a real sort of strong request and to say, hey, we're missing a really important form of electric mobility, bicycle mobility, and because of the nature of e-bikes, and they do represent quite a significant sort of like-for-like replacement to a lot of the car VMT, so by vehicle miles traveled. And so I think those were the sort of the points that were made, and staff took those points to heart, and at board's direction.
Sure, thank you. Got my questions answered. We'd be happy to include it or see no need to pull it.
Okay, do any other members want to pull any other items? No? Okay, we're ready for the roll call vote.
Oh, I just wanted to make a comment briefly. if I
Oh,
could,
yes,
since-
sure.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank the staff. So as the chair of the Alameda County Transportation Commission, our $4 million partnership with the agency, I just really want to thank the staff. I know that most of them are on Zoom and listening, but I had a chance to really get a lot of questions answered, both for my agency, but also as a cyclist, about how this program would be implemented equitably to ensure that low-income households are prioritized, and that we operate a lottery system that ensures that we don't create an onerous burden on people to access and seek funding for this. And I just thought that the staff's work on this was spectacular. It was very thorough and helpful discussion I had with them. So I'm very enthusiastic about this program. I look forward to coming up.
Thank you. More comments?
Yeah, thank you for thank you, Chair. Thank you for your comments about equitable distribution of where these locations will be. And I just wanted to add also that I think some sort of bike events where people could try the bikes out in some of the locations that we're talking about that might serve some of our lower income communities might be helpful. I've been to Bend once, and just being able to see them, touch them and feel them will get people to try to access the program. Because without any reference at all, it's hard to understand how to
I
access.
think one of the major emphasis, I think this is, well, I own an e-bike. So I went through the experience, when I bought my e-bike, they could go far away, and it's heavy, I can't put it in my, so like, I think one of the things we're really trying to emphasize about that is everyone should use an e-bike with some regularity, because it's same thing with an electric car and with charging. You don't use the product, you don't necessarily understand the benefits and how exciting and how awesome it is, but also there's some of the scenes around, hey, these things are heavy, you can't just put them in a car, so you need to put them in places that people can try them and easily bike home on that charge. So those are some things that we're personally,
Thank you. Thank you.
Chair Alders, and then I'll.
Thank you, Chair. So this program is amazing, and I'm not actually speaking for CAC right now, but I am on Equity and Access and the Policy Advisory Council for the Transportation Commission, and this bike program is a really important part of our mobility plan and the way that we're addressing VOTs and emissions, and it's just a really core tenet of the Pine Bay Area 2050 and some of the other work that's been going on. So it's really cool to see this going forward, and to see our dollars leveraged in this way is just really impressive. And thanks to staff for the creative and very forward thinking efforts on this side.
Thank you, Director Biddle.
Thank you. I just had a quick correction for the minutes from the April 24th meeting. I had a really bad connection, so I was breaking in and out, but I didn't see that Tracy Unified participated in EVCE's Resilient Critical Municipal Facilities Phase 2, that they were doing their own work on electrifying their, So just, because that is not correct, right? Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'll reach out to you. Thank you. That was it.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table to make an amendment to the minutes, and then also to approve consent items 6 through 13. Motion was made by member Bowders, seconded by Gonzalez. Okay, and can we please have a roll call vote?
Absolutely. Albany. Yes. Berkeley. Berkeley.
Yes.
Thank you. Dublin.
Yes.
Emeryville. Aye. Dumont. Hayward.
Yes.
Livermore.
Yes.
Newark. Oakland. Aye. Piedmont. Aye. San Leandro. Aye. Stockton. Stockton. Tracy. Yes. Union City. Is that a yes?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Pleasanton.
Yes.
Alameda County.
Aye. Thank
Union
you.
City Councilors affirmative.
Thank you. We'll now move on to, we'll wait a second. I think we're trying to see if members going to rejoin the meeting virtual. And if we're ready, we'll move on to our regular agenda item, number 14, our report from the CEO.
Okay.
We're pulling up the slide.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm just gonna read it off the screen here. We had our second executive committee, or our newly constituted executive committee in May 3rd, where I provided an update on the budget that we're doing today and gave a review of EDC energy prepayment transaction. We did hold a special board retreat on April 24th, where members received an update on all of our local programs. Discussing in some detail here as well. And in terms of new staff, I'm very happy to share that Scott Harding is joining EDC as Director of Origination in our Power Resources team. Scott spent 22 years in public sector utilities, leading energy resource planning and operations efforts, and has successfully originated and negotiated hundreds of megawatts of new clean energy projects. On the name and brand exploration update, Staff presented an update to the brand evolution, an update on brand evolution and name exploration at the April board meeting. We presented this timeline. We're contemplating some modification of this timeline as the start date for Stockton has been pushed to January 1, 2025. The imperative of getting everything ready and done this month, say, is a little bit mitigated because we don't have to start putting mailers in the mail in the fall. We have some time. And so I think at this time, we're really working towards a plan where we would bring the name to the board in July for potential approval in June, but leave ourselves the opportunity to also discuss it in July. We will be having presentation to the marketing and regulatory subcommittee and the executive committee again, as well as the board and CAC ad hoc. So by the time this item is brought in June, I believe all board members save 4 will have received at least 1, if not 2, informational presentations. And we are endeavoring to go and do one-on-one outreach to those 4 who are not members of the executive committee and the MRL or the ad hoc committee, such that all board members will have heard what we're working on, and we'll have the option to take action in June. Great.
Thank you, and thank you for including the members that aren't on existing committees. I appreciate that thoroughness. Are there any public comments with respect to the CEO's report from the public or questions from directors?
Quick question. So is the branding effort to just change the name ultimately PPC to like something?
Yeah, and it's not just the name. So the name is an important part of the effort, but in changing the name, there's also a general effort to transition to a brand identity that is more resonant with consumers. So as we think about moving towards what we do today, which is very much behind the scenes, to doing things like engaging people with electric bikes or charging stations, where consumer decisions and consumer visibility are, we want to adopt a brand identity and name that is going to support that work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments, questions?
There are no hands raised for public.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the update. We'll now move on to our Community Advisory Committee Chair Eldred, and thank you for providing us with the annotated agenda and notes from the meeting held on Monday. We're happy to hear your report.
Thank you, Chair. So in your packet, if you go to this agenda item, which is 14, I believe, maybe 15, there is a annotated version. All the CAC comments are in red, so you can see where they are on each thing. And in this month's, we have quite a few letters from the public that were also included that were not necessarily included to the board. So that's just there in this packet. We do want to report out that the CAC turned in a letter of support for a program that staff has put together. It's a brilliant program. Really good work has been done around the people, and it's a microgrid program. So we did write a letter of support. It was submitted with the application, and we're really impressed with this program. It's exactly the kind of thing that we actually thought to start this for. There should be a copy of that letter in there. I believe it's in there somewhere. We did receive a request. It's a sign-on letter, which is attached also in the electric version online. There's links to the sign-on letter, a fact sheet, and what's happening there. So we'll be taking a look at that. We did receive some letters from the public that were not submitted to the board, so we have included those in there to look at, but due to time, I will not go heavily into those at this moment. And the members of the CAC had asked for resources around what it would take to actually get to 24-hour renewable power that was actually matched to the time that it was used. And so I currently only put one of the resources in here, but we went and found some of those resources instead of having staff do it, because that's aligned with some of our other work. And so just have that included. And that is, the rest of our comments are actually on items on the agenda, so I'll full comment.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for our chair of the CAC? Okay, seeing none, any public comments?
There are no hands raised for this item.
Okay, thank you so much for the update and for your leadership on this. We're now going to move on to item number 16. This is the draft fiscal year 23-24 budget. This is an informational item and the first chance for the entire board to review the proposed budget. And Nick, will you be kicking us off?
Yes. So for many board members, the first time on the budget, so just a reminder that we presented this. This is our process. We will present this to our executive committee meeting, then to the board as an informational item, then back to the executive committee as an information, as a, I guess, as an action item or an item to be recommended, and then to the full board in June for final approval. In any year where we modify our value proposition, or we seek to modify our value proposition, or value propositions or discount, we also hold a public comment process, which I believe is open now or will imminently be open, and those public comments will be presented to the board at our June meeting as well. So in the face of rising energy costs, which we're certainly observing, we're very happy to share that ECE is going to continue to be able to serve our community with cost competitive, lower cost, and clean energy that continues to, while continuing to be able to make critical investments in local clean energy projects. Overall, electricity rates are up. This is manifest really PG&E's rates. PG&E has significantly increased their rates, and the PCIA is down. And these are both driven by very significant increases in wholesale electricity prices. We continue to index our rates to PG&E, which means our rates are set at, in this case, a discount to PG&E, but the rates are otherwise the same, structures of the rates, time of use rates, and the like. We're setting our discount with the idea that we're trying to provide meaningful value proposition to consumers while still being able to make investments in local development and set aside significant funds for our reserves and maintaining a strong financial position. Let's go next slide, please. So from a high-level summary, we are seeing revenues increase by about 170 million, from 769 to 934. We are similarly seeing our procurement costs increase by roughly that amount, from 535 million to almost $700 million. We are as such forecasting a $177 million surplus that would be allocated to a mix of our reserves, the purchase of more long-term renewable energy, and increased discounts to customers. So we are presenting the base case. I think it is important to note that these figures will change. Particularly, our costs and revenues are really subject to market volatility, and while we do effectively fix a share of those costs, they're going to go up, they're going to go down, and those are based largely on factors that are out of our control. So what we can control is how much insurance we buy, how much we hedge our position or hedge our expenses. And then the variability in our revenue is largely going to be driven by things like heat. If you have a really hot summer, we're going to see a lot more revenue because people are going to use a lot more electricity. So under our in this base case proposal that we're bringing forward, we're proposing to increase our discount for our base Bright Choice product from 3% to 5% and reduce the cost of our renewable 100 product from 0.75 cent premium to a 0.25 cent premium above PG&E. These two steps have the effect of reducing revenue by $23 million because we are essentially giving more value to the customer. We're lowering, relatively speaking, lowering the cost to consumers. Last year, the board approved a one-time $50 bill credit that we gave to all 125,000 households that are on CARE. CARE is a low-income rate and is the only tool we have to determine whether or not a customer is low income. We do not collect income data from our customers. The only sort of measure we have to determine whether somebody meets some income qualification is CARE. And so that is why we focus on using that measure to provide incremental benefit to our low income customers. Last year, we provided that discount in September. We would expect to do that again this year. The benefit of September is August and September tend to be pretty high for bill periods. It's the summertime, lots of AC, and so that's when we found that the extra $50 goes a longer way. We are assuming current rates and PCIA are unchanged. I think that's an important assumption because the PCIA can change and rates can change. Typically, what we do is provide a mid-year update of the budget. And a big reason we do that is because PG&E's projections of what their rates could be towards the end of 2023 and in 2024 are absolutely subject to change. So we want to update to say these rates have gone up or they've gone down relative to our forecast. That's going to have an effect on our revenues. We are projecting an uncollectibles rate of 1.5% in 2023. Down to 1% in 2024. That 1% is in line with more pre-COVID historicals. We have seen our uncollectibles slowly go down as we get further and further away from the heart of COVID. On the energy cost front, as I said, these are energy costs that are subject to sort of our current forecasts. Those forecasts are going to change. Prices could go up, prices could go down. I'm going to speak to that a little bit later. The key point on energy costs, the key change is we are proposing to increase our carbon-free content in 2023 and 2024 relative to our base schedule that was approved last year by the board. So in 2023, we are proposing to increase our total carbon-free content, which is made up of large hydropower and renewable energy, to 76%, and in 2024 to 81%. This will add cost between $3.6 and $21 million, depending on the kind of carbon-free energy we buy. If it's all large hydro, it will be on the low end. If it's all PCC1 renewables, it will be on the high end, and depending on the blend. And that blend is going to be largely a function of availability. We are in a very tight market for clean energy products because so many other CCAs like ourselves are also seeking to increase their carbon-free content. And then on the other costs, we are proposing to add an incremental 15 staff, and we are proposing to increase relative to last year our marketing budget quite considerably. This is largely due to work that is happening to implement the name and rebranding effort, one, and two, as we start to go to much more consumer-facing programs, we move away from, we'll say, brand marketing, where it's just about, hey, this is who we are, to much more focused and, unfortunately, much more expensive efforts to acquire customers to do things like use our electric bikes or charge their cars at our charging stations. Next slide, please. And I'm sorry to say, we're also maintaining our, and there's a typo on the slide, we are maintaining our proposed funding for our local development program at the levels of last year, which is $22.5 million. So this is the schedule for our carbon-free content that was approved in April 2022. It shows the trajectory for our Bright Choice product to get to our 2030 target of 100% carbon-free energy. You'll note that in 2023, our carbon-free target is 66, and 24 it's 71. In our last fiscal year's budget, the board did approve an increase in our carbon-free content, 2022 and 2023. So it was increased by 5% in our last budget for this current operating year to 71. Now we're increasing by another 5% to 76%. Slide, please. And obviously, R100, renewable 100 is 100% renewable, so it's not subject to a schedule, but it's 100% renewable today. So I think one of the reasons why we are presenting this flexibility, or well, we don't want to say only carbon-free large hydro, which is much less expensive. We may not be able to buy it. We don't want to say only 100 renewables, because not just because of the cost. Yes, it is more expensive, but there's also constrained supply. One of the reasons why the costs are so high, $21 million, is because we've seen a 2.5x increase in the cost of PCC1 renewables in this very short term. The long-term prices, when we enter into 10, 15, 20-year contracts for new big projects, are largely unchanged. But we're seeing the investment world to be a short squeeze. We're seeing a short squeeze on the supply of renewables in 2023 and 2024, and that is causing a very significant uptick in price. Next slide, please. So in our last year's budget, we developed a formula for how to deal with these quite considerable surpluses, and so that formula was a waterfall where we would first take any surplus at the end of the year. As we close the books on this year, we're going to be running our net income through this waterfall. But the waterfall that was approved by the board last year was first allocate some set amount of money to our working capital needs. Next, set aside a certain fixed set of money to our reserves. And then everything that's left gets split 50-50 between investing in new long-term clean energy projects and a one-time customer bill credit. If our net position does not, say, exceed 150 million, then that would result in a lower contribution to reserves. But the working capital first, because working capital is what we need, sort of the lifeblood of our operations. Those are the dollars that we use every single day to buy energy, post letters of credit, and do the things that we need. The reserves are more for our long-term financial stability strategy. Next slide, please. So in terms of the value proposition change, one is sort of trying to present this in this context of what is this actually worth to customers? And so for a residential customer, our current 3% discount is equal to about a $20 a year discount on their bill relative to what they would be paying if they were PG&E customers. Each 1% decrease in the cost of Bright Choice or increase in the discount results in a $6.50 annual increase in their savings. And so at 5%, customers would expect residential customers would experience savings of $33.51. Now, that is before they receive the one-time bill credit. So if you take the one-time bill credit based on our current forecasts, customers would expect to save $41.74. I think what's important to note is for a care customer, for our low-income customers, you should add $50 to that. So for our care customers, they would expect to save more like $90. So a care customer they'll get a $50 bill credit, not a $9 bill credit. So there's $41 incremental savings relative to non-care customers. For our renewable 100 customers, it's a similar dynamic, except renewable 100 is priced at a premium. So today, renewable 100 customers pay roughly $34 more a year than they would if they were on PG&E. $10 each 1%, each reduction of a 0.25% is roughly equal to $10. And so under proposal of the budget, they would be paying $12 a year in a premium, $1 a month, after the one-time bill credit would be a $3 annual premium for 100% renewable energy. And in total, for all of our customers, residential, commercial, the proposal is providing 36.9, almost $37 million of bill savings relative to PG&E in this next fiscal year. Next slide, please. So we've gone through some of the, big changes, increase the discount, reduce the cost of renewable energy, one-time bill credit to all of our Carefair customers. This is really just a reiteration of those points. Next slide, please. So on our expenses, we've talked a little bit about our energy procurement costs. This comprise more than energy costs comprise more than 90% of our operating costs, and so that's certainly an area of emphasis here. But we will also be talking about operating costs and local development. Next slide. I think that the important note, I've sort of spoken to increasing our carbon-free content a bit, total potential cost up to $21 million. I think the thing to sort of point to, this is about the volatility that I sort of highlighted around where our results are relative to where we're forecasting. It's highlighted by this graphic. So the yellow line on the bottom is our 2022, 2023, so this current year's costs. And then we're looking at the gray line are the yellow line is our forecast. The gray line is our forecast for this coming fiscal year. And the orange line is the actuals. So what you're seeing there is pretty significant deviations from our forecast with a massive spike in December. So, we do take action to hedge against that, but there's only so much you can hedge, and then there are also our costs associated with hedging. I think one thing to note is there is some level of correlation between our ability to hedge against these price spikes. These price spikes have often been driven by extreme weather, driven by very high natural gas prices. So when we buy more carbon-free energy, buy more renewable energy, it has some effect in hedging us against a natural gas, but particularly in times like December, it's mitigated because when we think about renewable energy, we buy, say, solar, a big solar farm that produces most of its energy spring, summer, fall, and it produces most of its energy, or all of its energy during the day. When we put a battery next to it, then it can produce at night. So when you have a December price spike, solar has a less ability to physically hedge you against a December natural gas price spike. There are resources. Wind has some effect, but again, one of the challenges that we're sort of across the economy, across really the globe, are dealing with is how do we find more clean energy resources that can produce in the wintertime with consistency? Solar, we know solar works really well. It's very cost effective, but December, January, when it's not sunny out, it's rainy, especially like we had when it was really rainy. So even if you had solar, it didn't do very much for you. It has limited effect. So there are more, we tend to hedge or protect ourselves more with financial instruments than we do with carbon resources. Slide, please. Okay, so on the overhead expense, I think that the highlights are meaningful increase in our personnel, which is largely driven by growing our staff by 15 FTE. Meaningful increase in our marketing budget. Some of these are one-time expenses that I'll get into more. Some of them are going to be more ongoing as we do more direct program marketing. Some legal and policy and regulatory expenses that I'll speak to, and then for the rest, cost increases that are much more just in line with the growing organization. Next slide, please. So personnel. Is there any way that the The box at the bottom, you just can't, folks can't see this, the last bullet point. Great way to get that out, otherwise it's okay.
You can right click on the three dots to hide the floating menu.
Okay, now we.
Yeah, there we go. Good, beautiful.
We did it. We all worked up there.
So 15 FTEs, we'll speak to those, the cost of living adjustment, and a merit-based / promotional compensation pool. Next slide, please. And those are in line, those levels are in line with the budget from last year. This is our org chart. It's a bit of an eye chart. I'm not going to speak to this. This is something, you know, that we did want to share just so people have a sense of kind of how the org is structured. Next slide. And these are where the new positions are allocated. You'll see it's a pretty good dispersion across the organization. Really focused on enhancing capabilities, either doing more or doing more ourselves and not outsourcing. Next slide, please. This next slide actually gives you sort of all the positions that we're seeking to hire, everything from a data engineer to help with all the massive customer data that we're taking in and trying to sort of wrangle that data, more IT support, design and copywriting and customer experience resources as we really start to go more customer facing, finance and operational support, efforts on our power resources team to do more ourselves. So things like CAISO Day Ahead. Right now, we outsource that to the Northern California Power Agency. By bringing on a CAISO Day Ahead manager, we're going to be able to bring in-house more of those competencies. And then more program management capabilities for our global development efforts, and then contract management. As we're seeing just way more and more and more contracts volume as we're doing more stuff. Next slide, please. So in the marketing space, really the big drivers are advertising and communications. So those are the big increases. Those relate to, as I said, customer-facing programs, e-bikes, DC fast charge, induction programs that are really trying to reach customers where they are, and then website redevelopment. That's really the biggest expense around the brand, is redeveloping the website to make it more consumer friendly and user friendly. Next slide, please. On the legal policy regulatory front, the main two changes are we do have some pending litigation expenses that we do expect to potentially incur, which I'm at liberty to go into too much detail in open session about. We also do have an open request for offers for new renewable energy projects, where we are going to be negotiating those contracts. And so every 2 years we do that. It's a pretty big legal lift there. On the legislative consultants front, we did hire a firm to work with us to help secure federal funds. So we hired, getting the name of the firm, I believe they actually work with a couple of our cities.
Townsend.
Sorry?
Townsend.
Townsend. So I think Townsend. They help us navigate, they're helping us navigate a grant application we're making to the Department of Energy, for instance. Next slide, please. So on the operations front, these funds, largely the same costs, some movement in sort of where funds are being expended, more operations expense, which, you know, I think big part of that is being driven by an effort in the light of Silicon Valley Bank and First Republic to get our head around treasury, some of the risks we face from treasury management. So hiring some consultants there, and then just generally growing the organization. Those are sort of the main highlights there. Next slide, please. And then general G&A, the big difference here is rent and utilities. So We are at our last board meeting, I believe the board approved a delegation to negotiate and execute a lease agreement for new office space. And so this is forecasting that is starting to hit our expenses, but that has a corollary on the next slide. Next slide, please. That is a corollary of a significant reduction in capital expenditures because we are not going to be pursuing the tenant improvements. We had budgeted $7 million in the last fiscal year. It turned out to be close to $14 million. So we're not going to be incurring the capital expenditures to invest in the building that we own. We're going to be shifting our strategy there to evaluate other options for that space. Next slide, please. So on to the local development budget. As I said, we are maintaining our funding level at 22.5 million, which is the level that we funded at last year. And these funds are being allocated across our program areas. Heavy emphasis on transportation electrification, building electrification. For the use of our funds, we are making considerable investments in what we call community resilience. But we've structured it in a way that does not require significant direct investment in East Bay Community Energy. Next slide, please. So why transportation electrification? Because transportation is the single largest source of greenhouse gas emissions and particulate pollution in the East Bay, or in our service area, frankly. So from Oakland down to Fremont out to Tracy, it's really transportation, really increasingly medium and heavy duty diesel trucks. And so hence a big area of emphasis is the electrification of goods movement. We also are focused on investing in publicly available charging infrastructure, focused on tailoring it to renters and low-income communities to ensure equitable access as we see a broader transition to electric vehicles. We are working with our cities to support their fleet electrification efforts, including a public transit agency in Newark that we're supporting to help electrify their bus fleet. I'll note we are not working on bus electrification with AC Transit because AC Transit has been very focused on hydrogen as their strategy. So it doesn't neatly match our focus on charging infrastructure, but we have direct and ongoing engagement with AC Transit around how do we supply them with the renewable energy that they're going to need for to ensure that the hydrogen is using is green hydrogen. Like this. And of course, electric I will speak to it there. And then of course, so these are the four categories. Public fast charging. This is an initiative that was approved by the board. I believe it was in November. It's a 10-year agreement with a $30 million not to exceed that we're funding annually. So every year we're allocating $3 million to backstop the deployment of this infrastructure. And then, our hope, our expectation is that actually these backstop funds won't be needed, that these charging systems will actually generate net income, and then these backstop dollars can be used to reinvest in more infrastructure. We're setting funds aside for more investment in medium and heavy duty electrification infrastructure to the tune of $3 million. We are proposing $3 million to invest in a program to accelerate EV adoption, particularly with an emphasis on access for low and moderate income consumers. And then there is the electric bike program that was approved earlier today. It's funded to the tune of $2 million. And that's multi-year funding. That's a multi-year program as well. One thing I think you'll note here is sort of a theme that we're going to is trying to move away from one-off, we're funding a program this year and those are a new program, to multi-year programs, multiple years of funding that ensure there's persistence of investment, which is going to drive sort of more scale in what we do. Next slide, please. Next is building electrification. So the two areas of funding with sort of three categories of building electrification. So the first two are really focused on workforce. And so when the Air District took action to really accelerate the transition of from natural gas appliances to all electric appliances. I think one of the challenges we've observed in working in the space is the lack of a trained workforce and the need to really help bring contractors along to get experience doing this work so that by 2025, 2026, when we're really starting to look at these regulations going into effect, we have the workforce to do the installations and we have the contractors who know how to do the work so that when someone's water heater breaks, the person who arrives at their house comes with a heat pump and it's not, it's not sort of a special occasion, that is just how things work. So with that in mind, we're seeking $2 million to work to develop an installation network of electrical contractors to deliver reasonably priced electrification upgrades for consumers. So here what we're trying to say is we'd like to seek to partner with these contractors and provide some sort of upfront investment in these contractors so that we can then go to consumers who want to electrify and say, here's a qualified contractor in your community who has gone through a process and we know they're going to do good work and they're going to sell you, they're going to at the front end sell you electrification, not say, well, heat pumps, they don't work. We're going to, you should do more natural gas. So it's that what we do is sort of market development in the contractor space, and we want to pair that with workforce development. And so this would be a $1.5 million investment in electrification workforce training programs. I would say at this point in time, we don't have a specific idea. This is exactly who we want to work. This is exactly what we want to do. Our intention is, if these funds are approved, to engage in a process with kind of all the key stakeholders to be able to find what are the best ways to allocate these funds to ensure that folks in the communities we serve are finding opportunities for good family sustaining jobs in the electrical and plumbing trades to support the electrification work that needs to happen. Next slide, please. So the third area of emphasis in electrification is a program we call the Healthy Communities Program, and this is a follow-on from effort work that we've really been doing since our last budget. In our last budget, there was a proposal to make a one-time investment in asthma care. That the feedback we got was more focused on electrification as a measure to reduce asthma. We took that and brought it forward in the fall, an initial proposal that we got sort of approval to continue with and bring to this board for final approval. And that program is to take $5 million a year for the next 3 years to invest in the retrofitting of gas stoves, 1,000 to 2,000 gas stoves with induction ranges in households with children suffering from pulmonary disease. There's been significant research over the last 6 months in particular that shows that something like 25% of pediatric asthma cases in California are directly caused by cooking with natural gas stove. These EDC dollars will be used solely for the delivery and installation of these induction cooktops, and we would be seeking to partner with one or more entity to help acquire these households. So, a medical Kaiser, Children's Hospital Oakland, Alameda County Health Authority, I believe, would partner with us, and they would make a referral to EDC for an induction range retrofit. That referral would come, we would have a list of qualified contractors, qualified partners who would then go into the home and do the work at no cost to that resident. We have, there has been some intention to try to pair that with an ongoing research effort to demonstrate that this induction installation has a persistent health benefit for that child and that family. And we have secured an initial $250,000 from a foundation to support that research. We are not intending to fund that research. That's research that would be funded externally, though we have done some work to try to facilitate connections between potential researchers and sources of funding that are interested in seeing this program. Next slide, please. On the resilience front, we have $2 million budget request. And that budget request is really focused on not the actual funding for installing solar and storage, but on building a technology platform or acquiring a technology platform, let me say, to allow us to co-optimize and control all the different batteries, solar systems, thermostats that are out there to be able to get the best grid and clean energy value, and also support pre-engineering work that goes in here. We, I think, are currently looking at a portfolio of over 100 municipal facilities that are candidates for solar and storage. Well, you have to go and you have to do a site walk and look at the drawings to say, all right, well, of these 100, there may only be 50 after you do that analysis that are good candidates to install solar because of the age of the roof or where the electrical, the state of the electrical. And so that's what we're asking to use our net income for, but that is not the totality of the investment. The round that we're completing right now, phase 1, would deploy 2.7 megawatts of solar, 4.8 megawatt hours of storage across 29 sites, resulting in over $25 million of investment in clean energy in Alameda County. These 29 sites will be resilience hubs. These are hubs, places where the solar storage will be and will create resilience in times of blackout. These buildings will have power through and support the communities in many different ways.
Let me ask a rookie question. Okay, I see the Fremont Station microgrid. Say there's an HOA with 50 houses and they said we want to be a microgrid connected to that.
It sort of depends on the 50 houses and where they are. If they're behind the line, if they're behind the fence or in front of the fence for the utility. So microgrids cannot cross public rights of way. Now, all of our projects are on municipal facilities and they all also have to be behind a public right of way. So, you know, you might have it at a fire station. We couldn't put the solar across the street and run wiring across the street because that would violate state law or what constitutes a microgrid. In our case, all of our microgrids are behind the meter. So phase 2, we're contemplating 50 sites. We're developing an additional 50 sites. So we've gone through some of that initial assessment. So we know the list from 100 down to 50. We are sort of initiating the development there. That would be another $40 million of investment. And I think the most exciting thing is something Chair of the CAC mentioned is a grant we are pursuing from the Department of Energy for $35 million to very significantly increase this program. You know, if we were to receive that grant, which would be implemented over multiple years, I would expect that we would be able to deploy these microgrid projects across hundreds of facilities, and we would very quickly ramp up the kinds of facilities. Right now, we're very focused on our city municipal facilities, 1, because of the relationship we have with our cities, 2, because of the billing relationship. We know the cities aren't going anywhere, so if we're going to say, hey, we're going to put $1 million of equipment on your building, the city, we're confident the city will be there for the next 20 years to pay the bills. One of the challenges you do get when you go to the privately owned is, well, you know, the tenant of the building doesn't own the building, maybe the one who wants to buy the solar, but the owner of the building says, I don't really want to do it. Or what if somebody sells the building or the building goes unoccupied? There is more risk to EBC in doing this model outside of municipal space. But if we get this GRIP funds, I think what next thing we would do is move from just municipal to including other government buildings. Schools would be a great example. We really want to focus. There's a lot of solar in schools where there's an opportunity to put a battery to make that solar a lot more valuable and then create resilience. And there are schools that don't have solar, or there are buildings that could have solar, but they need to be re-roofed. And so those 35 million could go to fund a lot of those things. Next slide, please. And all of these projects will fit into a virtual power plant framework. On the community grants front, that was funded to the tune of $4.2 million in our last budget to support 3 years of community grants at $1.4 million a year. EBC staff have developed those grant priorities to support our programs. We've really focused on community innovation efforts that align with our program areas: building electrification, transportation electrification, and community resilience. We are planning to issue the first grant opportunity focused specifically on education awareness around induction into the youth. We will be holding with the CAC a formal workshop on June 7th to gather further community feedback to develop ideas for the next grant cycles. Those will be August, January 24, and January 25. So there are 3 grant cycles that are coming, and we'll be getting feedback from the public and the community to inform those grant cycles. Next slide, please. Actually, I think that's done. That's it.
Thank you, very comprehensive. I will now take, and this is an informational item, so any questions or comments about the Chair Eldred?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to give a quick feedback from the CAC on this item, and my apologies because the notes that got sent out are really poor. So it should have been a little bit more robust there. But the feedback from the CAC outside of my personal comment is that there's a strong interest in seeing the $15 million grant that's like kind of the evolution of that big fun process that happened in that community, kind of pulled out, given a little bit of extra transparency so that there is discussion around this. There was exceptionally strong support for the pre-apprenticeship training programs, and just hats off to staff for the thinking and direction on this item. It's such a huge need in our community. There is, and just Nick, to clarify really quick, the $50 to care customers, that's an additional $50 only for EVCE care customers. That's not something that all care customers get, right?
Correct.
Awesome, support that strongly. We did look in that 36.9 million of this adjustments to the value proposition and the on-bill credits results in, for the average, not the care customers, but for the average Right Choice customer, $3.56 a month. And there was some feelings that money, like $3.56 in savings is great, all cost savings is great, and a foundation of why CCAs exist, but perhaps if the money were given as a whole, there could be more tangible, visible benefits in our community if that were treated as a lump sum. We love the multi-year grants, and again, gratitude for that. There is quite a lot of interest in seeing some of those smaller community innovation grants done, so that our constituent groups and CBOs that we work with have the ability to like build out new ideas and get them to the point that they would qualify for those longer term grants. And the last ones are, really want to see metrics on the EV charging stations, especially when looking at things from an equity lens. And for board members who aren't here before, this is coming from a project that actually originated in Oakland on the Equitable Climate Action Planning Committee, where neighborhood leads went and actually did door knocking in their own communities to identify how people felt about electrification. So we got really strong inputs from communities that we have historically had a very hard time actually reaching and getting feedback from. And their big concern was that electric vehicle charging stations are a vehicle for gentrification and higher rates of internal displacement. And so we support this program strongly, but do want to measure actual uptake of electric vehicles in those communities to inform future funding decisions. And then 100% love the resilience and virtual power plant projects. And there was several public comments around can we identify sites in our communities throughout the service territory that would be good fits for this program. And that's the CAC feedback.
Thank you. Go ahead, Director Powers.
Sure, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, one thing Hayward is interested in is reducing the renewable 100 rate to zero, or the premium to zero to come in line with PG&E rates. And although I understand that would cost maybe some money over time, the marketing tool of being able to say that we're at the same rate of PG&E would, I think, probably save us money in the long run. You know, in Hayward, I think it's that something like 85% of our residents are with renewable 100. And I just think that, you know, I'm just advocating for that, I understand. I mean, I don't know if I'm looking at this right, but it looks like it would cost EBC about 5 million a year to do that if we brought it to zero. And I don't know if I'm reading that right, but just seems like in the long run to entice more customers onto the renewable 100, that might be a savings in the long run. So I really appreciate staff looking at that. The other thing is really, I love the swap out for the induction heating or stoves. And I think as a second tier would be great. You know, it sounds like you're getting referrals from pediatricians, maybe who have asthma, but it would be great if, you know, we could somehow add on the preventative measure, anyone with a new infant, basically, like to be able to stop this cycle before it begins, because you know, if they have asthma, that, you know, that's already a crisis for that child, I think, going forward. So to serve as a second tier, trying to get new infants educated on this and families with, you know, infants educated on this and potentially be able to offer that. I don't know if we have the budget for that, but I think better than coming after the fact. Yeah, and I love the idea of working with schools and everything for the micro grids for the solar. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Member Roach. Mr. Ballard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just stick to one topic because I want to align my comments with the prior two speakers. But on the workforce proposal for building electrification, that was of peak interest to me. It's a $1.5 million proposal you have. I really like what you had to say about it. I just had a couple of questions about it. So is the program design been created yet, or is it, if it's the budget's approved, you'll then go through a process? And where in the agency would we be deciding or helping fill out how that would be designed?
It would be designed in, so one, I have very likely grants that we can make instead of sort of direct workforce training that we would be implementing it with core competency of ours. So I would expect what we would do is work with stakeholders, the board, CAC, and other parties of interest to develop one or more grant solicitations that would then be open to application, and those grants will be reviewed.
Okay, so the board will have a part in just providing some color to it. So I'll just put on record now that I just feel very strongly about putting people who've been formerly incarcerated into jobs and using that as a tool for public safety, socioeconomic development for people who are traditionally and unfortunately overrepresented in the Black and Brown community here in the East Bay. And I just think that these are the future of jobs, and these are jobs that, in partnership with the Sheriff's Office, the Santa Rita Jail, and other nonprofits based mostly here in Oakland, that I think we could actually do something very transformative with. So I appreciate the staff proposing this program, and I think that we should look for ways to leverage workforce opportunities equitably. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few, one, just to take off on what Director Bowder said, I'm also very excited and supportive of the electrification workforce area, and would be interested in having discussions formally or informally about how that's going to be built out. 1.5 billion sounds like a lot, but it's not really a lot for this. And so if there's more money for that, great. Maybe not the first year, but maybe tee ourselves up to think in a manner where, oh, 1.5 in year one, and we're going to evaluate, after a while, and have a goal of increasing that second and third year, because to have a real impact, 1.5 billion or even 1.5 billion a year is not going to really have that significant impact. It's going to be good, it's just not going to have this big impact. So try to up that over time, if not the first year. Second thing is, I mentioned this at the executive committee meeting. I forget where else I mentioned it. The resilience hubs. I guess especially if we get this large grant you referred to, I don't think we need to be 100% wedded to government-owned buildings. I think it may make sense to have most of them be government-owned buildings, but faith-based and some NGOs, it could be worth evaluating some of those buildings on a case basis, and I wouldn't want to have a policy that completely says no to that ever, for at least the next couple of years. So I just want to, you've heard me say that before, I just want to say that again, that let's say most of the government-owned buildings, maybe we'll consider something else if something that comes up it's worth looking at. I think it would be worth looking at to do that, especially if this big grant comes in. And then finally, on the budget, the Bright Choice discount, we're right now at 3%, right?
Yes.
And we started at 1.5% when the agency was first created. And the recommendation is to go to 5%. If we were to only go to, let's say, a 3.5% discount, that 1.5% that we're not giving as additional discount, how much money is that?
Each 1% is worth
6.6 million.
6.6 million.
So almost $10 million if we gave it 3.5% instead of 5%. Is that right?
Yes.
Have I done it?
Rough math.
Yeah, okay, so I would want us to do that. I mean, I would suggest that we consider doing that. I'm a little uneasy giving more and more discounts, because at some point we're gonna have to undo those. And it looks bad when we're gonna be raising rates in the future. I would rather have that money spent, still a 3.5% discount is pretty good, have the rest of that money spent $10 million on more local development, more heavy duty electrification, more workforce, all these other things that you're talking about, I think is a better investment than going anything above a 3.5% discount. And I feel pretty strongly about that.
I'll note that we are seeing an over 20% increase in cost of rates. So part of this is in the relation to the fact that rates are increasing significantly for all customers. So our increased discount actually serves to offset very significant cost inflation for consumers.
Is all that and all these options? We're not voting on this today, right?
No.
Okay, so when we get the staff,
Those options are in the staff presentation. That's sort of like each incremental change in the value proposition carries with it. We don't have a specific proposal to use the funds for other things. I would say, realistically, we're sort of maxed out in our staff capacity to manage more local development funds. If you were to say, here's $10 million more, I don't think that I could realistically commit to deploying those dollars in with the care that we have deployed our dollars to date.
okay, some of that 10 million I was going to suggest, most of that could be for more local development with those other programs we're talking about. Some could be purchased more renewable energy on the short term, which will reduce the greenhouse gases level more quickly than we otherwise are patterned to. And we talked about that as well. And that's, again, there are pros and cons to all these things, but I'd like to see the PowerPoint, which was very thorough. I don't think was in our packet, right?
It is.
It's in the packet. My apologies. I request separate of it. Okay, my apologies. But so there'll be a staff report prior to the next month's meeting that has all these things and might show some options. Okay, because at least we can make a choice.
Sure. Yeah.
But I want to just us to just consider those other options. But I think there's some benefit there.
Yeah.
That's all.
Thank you, Director Kell. Director Bartlett? Director Bartlett, can you hear us? You could unmute yourself. Okay, Member Quadri.
All right, thank you for the presentation. I've just got a couple questions / comments. Notice the 60% increase in staffing, where the year-to-date estimates were only 8%, or in operating revenue. You mentioned one-time activities, and I'm wondering if there's a more scaled approach to bringing on those 15 staff if they're needed. Just seeing that pretty dramatic increase in cost. The other was a clarification question on slide 21. The operating budget looked like those were in the negative. Just wanted to clarify, what was being shown there.
Jason, do you want to speak to, why don't I speak to the first question about staffing? And then Jason, our finance manager, will speak to the second. So the way we budget for staffing, and the reason why you see the differential between budget and actuals for last year is we fully bundle, we fully burden the budget with 12 months of salary for the staff. Whereas in reality, when we have staff, we're not hiring everybody July 1 of day one of the fiscal year. There's, you hire 1 or 2 people a month. So your actual burdening in the budget does not match the actual expenses incurred. The reason we do that is because we want to give the board an accurate assessment of what the cost of that staffing level will be going forward into the future. Does that make sense?
It does. I guess my question was more, well, I understand that part. Just looking at the year-to-year increase in operating revenue and revenue in general, right? It just seems like it would make more sense to take a stepwise approach as opposed to 15 in 1 year.
I guess the main, we're a 6-year-old operating agency. We've been operating for 5 years. So we are continually sort of trying to, we have yet to, I would say, reach steady state organizationally. If you think about comparable CCAs that have, in the case, been around longer than us, MCE Energy is the CCA that serves Marin, Contra Costa, Solano County, and Napa County. Their staffing levels, I believe they're almost at or over 100 staff. Clean Power Alliance, which is the large CCA equivalent, somewhat larger total customer size, but equivalent to us in Southern California, has a similar staffing level. So the staffing levels that we're proposing, we believe are actually kind of in line with a growth rate that will level off, in time, but we're still, frankly, from my perspective, trying to catch up.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then you had a second question, Jason. Will you speak to the non?
Yeah. Great. Yes. Can I see the sliding question? Sorry. So the question is why are these negative? It's just a perspective relative to income. So, for example, the interest income in non-operating activities is, as you can see, proposed to be about 1.7 million, and the interest or the non-operating expenses are, estimated at 24.6 million, and so that just makes
Essentially, what's happening here is in 2022, 2023, we had forecast large capital expenditure associated with tenant improvements to a building that we purchased. That was budgeted. Those are expenses that actually have not been expended. We expend 10% of that 7 million on the pre-development work. And we've shifted away from the strategy of making those tenant improvements. That's the sort of explanation for the large deviation. Otherwise,
that's the capital expenditure on the bottom right.
Yeah, the capital expenditures, right, on the right. So the net operating activity is it's the net of revenue and expense. And the reason why there's such a big delta between budgeted and actuals is because we did not pursue the tenant improvements. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Director Bartlett also, it's hard to see, is his hand raised?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right, thank you, and apologies, my Zoom broke. After all this time, I want to say something. My Zoom breaks. I wanted to just echo support for Director Kalb's comments regarding particularly the sort of the economic development aspect of the projects. Honing in and pronouncing, a support for inculcating the population into learning this new trade and expanding economic growth into the community via these projects. I think that's a great policy to have and to pronounce and to make clear steps toward in the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more directors that are attending virtual that would like to weigh in? Are there any more hands raised? Adrian?
There are no further hands raised for this comment.
Okay. Member Tedder.
I just want to really briefly re-emphasize something that I said at the executive board. Slightly different to Member Cal's suggestion. I'm very happy to have us discount the rate permanently. What I'd love to see more is a different use of that one-time on-bill credit of 13 million. As much as I love to give money to people, it could probably be more effectively used, to support programs and more targeted. And I know that that's not permanent, and it's surplus, so it's not as dependable, but it could be used for some other support. And I'm perfectly happy to have us hire more people if we need more people to do that. And I know we can't do that from surplus, but I know we can figure it out.
Thank you. Any more comments, Member Gonzalez? And then we'll go to public comments. Sorry, after this one, make sure the public knows we are going to get to them.
Just if you want to focus on the dollars and cents and the risks. So for this, the primary revenue item is basically megawatt hours, kilowatt hours times PG&E rates minus some percentage, right? So that's the basic formula. I'd love if staff can just provide what the kilowatt hour assumption is. It doesn't have to be live right here, but just if you can just email that to the board, right? What's the total amount of sales we're talking about in the modeling? But the second question is, what assumption are we making about PG&E rates? Because I know that PG&E, I think, might have just made a rate submission here in the last week or so. They're making certain assertions about what their costs have been and therefore how that cascades through the rates that they will charge. And as I see our budgeting, we are 100% tied to PG&E rates. So I think having some sort of analysis of what PG&E is proposing and then what that would imply for our budgeting would be really important, because at the very end, I'm going to get to a question about risk management. On the cost side, there are three primary costs, but the vast one is energy procurement, obviously. So that is what it is, right? And you have to manage that risk. Under personnel, I was struck a little bit by the numbers that are here and what they imply. I started with the 2022-23 budget, 15.7, and I said, well, let that increase by 13.5%. Maximum merit, 3% COLA. And so I get to some difference, some delta, and I say fit plus 15 FTEs. I get to a fully loaded cost of like 270,000 for employees. I just want you to kind of revisit if there's something wrong with the math. Obviously, that delta becomes bigger if we use the actual 13.2 million. So just kind of work through the math before this comes back to us as final, or how can those FTEs be costing so much money? The last two questions or comments that I have is the 15% reserve balance. It's not an industry standard. And if it is an industry standard, what industry in particular are we talking about? Are we comparing to PG&E or are we comparing to other CCAs? So help me understand a little bit of that history.
The 50% balance?
The 50% operating reserve target. So to be very precise with language, yeah.
That is a target that has been recommended to CCAs generally by the rating agencies as the target level that they would like to see us hold to maintain our investment grade ratings.
Okay. It would be useful for some point in the future, I don't know exactly when, to revisit what others are actually doing in that regard. So I know that that's the rating agencies are asking for that, but what is actually?
And I think that is what's happening. Because the rating agencies are asking for it,
So that's the target. Thank you. It would be useful to understand what they're actually achieving.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I think my last question is more just a bigger picture question for you. And to be answered today or later when you come back with a budget. Just fundamentally, what are the top two risks that would keep you from achieving this budget? And how are we mitigating those risks? And not doing this like the answer today, but really thinking about that very carefully. How are we managing the risk of not achieving this budget?
More comments? Yeah, I will weigh in briefly, and we still have one agenda. I'm really excited about this budget. I think staff is extremely innovative and has taken a lot of feedback from this body throughout the years. I do have a request, if we could, once this is before being voted on, if we could have an executive summary, a 1 to 2 page document that just kind of gives us the history of PBCE, the number of customers we have and the cities that we serve in, just to give the community an overview. Once the budget's adopted, it's important that everyone has the same baseline information. I concur with many of the comments, specifically the ones made by Director Bowders with respect to working with the trades to partner with the reentry population. Thank you for mentioning the sheriff. There's a lot of great work being done with that department as well as the county. So I'm excited about opportunities to partner and leverage those resources. And also like the comment about the preventative work for the induction stoves getting to families with newborns rather than the impacts people to get ahead of this, be more proactive. So I support that as well. With respect to the community grants, do we have enough staff capacity to roll these grants out?
We do now.
Okay.
So we've hired staff, and so staff sufficiently to deal with stuff.
And then in response to the resilience and microgrids, I'm just gonna flag now that I have a new role. I don't see anything mentioned here about county sites, specifically unincorporated land. So I want to make sure that that's being considered on the board, and happy to partner with EPC on that. And then also there was a mention to partner with the county for specifically Alameda Health System. So happy to make those introductions as well. So I think we just need to demonstrate to our customers that we are reinvesting the money back into specific communities. And I hope that we are tracking and having metrics for all this amazing work that we could report on in the future. But I think it's extremely impressive and supported, and have many more comments and questions, but realize it's getting late and we still need to go to public comments. So Clerk, do we have any members from the public that would like to speak on this item?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Jessica Tovar, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
This is Jessica Tovar with the East Bay Clean Power Alliance. I have a lot of comments that won't fit in this time frame that you are giving me, but I want to highlight that $2 million for the Resilience Hubs Microgrids program. First of all, there should be more money towards community resilience, and it should include all the different identified and trusted locations in the community, like schools, like community centers, like churches and other faith-based or houses of worship, multi-affordable housing, senior housing, transitional housing, shelters should also be included for energy resilience. And so I really would like to see the board allocate money for that and instruct staff of East Bay Community Energy to work with the community. Right now, a lot of that money and that effort has been done without working with the community, which I think is an absolute shame, since we've been asking for the last 2 years for EBCE to invest in our energy resilience. Community grants should be replenished every year. We have not seen community grants, community innovation grants specifically, since 2019. And as a matter of fact, it should be known to the entire board that this money that was allocated last year not only was not dispersed, but was actually more of a distraction or kind of a bribe, because $15 million were being proposed to be given to a hospital. And that actually was really shameless. I'm really glad that we were able to stop that. But I really do think that you need to add more money into community innovation. There's so much more that I need to say about the budget, but again, I need to highlight there needs to be more investment in reaching equity and people who've been shut out of the clean energy economy. If you don't do this now, it's clearly never. This is 5 years into this agency. You have the power to do this for the communities that you serve. Clean power to the people.
Thank you. There's no further comment.
Okay, I just want to note that we only have this room reserved until 10 p.m. and we still have multiple items. I see 2 are an action item. The staff bill, we could get through to 2 of them within less than an hour. Do we need to continue? Yes.
I'm prepared to make motions on that.
Okay, so let's move on to item number 17.
So I would say on item 17, there's one update item at AB 538, which was an item that was quite thoroughly discussed during the CAC meeting. Today, it was announced that that bill will be a 2-year bill, so it will not be taken up this legislative session. And so one option is we could just move directly to the bills that are where we are proposing to take support or oppose unless amended. And skip the review, because other than the AB 538, the other bills were not discussed at the CAC. I will say what I might suggest is that for regionalization as a topic, that we plan a board study session in the coming months to talk about the topic. Again, given that there's no piece of active legislation in this session, there's no matter to take a position on. So that could be an option that I will.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve all the staff recommendations, excluding the bill held on suspense, to put it in a watch position and to bring it back for CAC's further review in the January timeline when it comes back to the committee at the legislature for review.
Okay, I will accept your motion, but before we get a second, I just want to see if there's any public comments on this item.
There are no hands raised for this item.
Okay, is there a second to Director Bowers' motion?
I'm unclear with the motion.
There's a list of bills. I'm making a motion to approve all the staff recommendations with the exception of the bill that was on the suspense calendar today and held. And to simply say that we'll sit in a watch position with no formal position, that it will be re-referred. Yes, and it'll be re-referred so the CAC can review any amendments in January before the board takes any further action. It's a 2-year bill.
And the study session for the board is good.
Yeah,
Yeah. That doesn't require the motion. I'm happy to second the motion, but I still have some comment or question about the legislative program, but not the right time.
Yes.
Thank you. Usually in the past, when we got a legislative report, we had recommendations to take or support these bills or oppose a bill. But then we've also had a chart of other bills that our lobbyist team and your team are kind of keeping track of, not like a million bills, but maybe, a dozen or so other bills. And did I miss that again? Did I miss something else in here?
Yeah, no, we did present a list of
in the packets for today?
the bills that we.
I'm totally missing some of that.
No, sorry. The bills that were support, I think the bills, these were the ones that were of note. So the bills that are here, there are other bills that are out there that they're not listed here. We're not really focused on them.
Right, but
in the past, you're right. We've actually provided a more comprehensive every bill, just to sort of say, this is what's happening without.
And then we're looking at these, and we may eventually take positions on some of them, but we're not yet. But usually, there's several bills like that.
Yeah, Nick, if I can jump in here to answer, I'm Alec Ward, the principal legislative manager. Yeah, we're proposing 8 bills for you all to take positions on tonight. So we didn't want to overwhelm you all with a large layout of all these other bills, but that can definitely be included in the next.
Okay, I find that additional information very, very helpful.
Excellent.
Those who want to, the board who want to look at it would also find it helpful. So like going forward, I'd like us not to undo that. This particular bill that probably would have been on that list, excuse me, is Nancy Skinner's SB 233 on the bidirectional electrification of charging electrification bill, which we should be supporting, and that should be an easy one to support, but it's not on any list, so we can't really vote on it right now. Sometimes we've taken bills off that we're looking at this list, and the board discussed it and actually went to support it because no one objected to it, and the staff thought it was a good idea. But now we have nothing to do that. We can't do that now tonight. So I would like us to, in the future, be able to have that option with the information in front of us on the next set of bills you're going to look at keep track of.
It sounds like the staff's willing to accommodate that.
And including Nancy's 233.
Okay, any more questions or comments before we do the roll call vote? Chair Alkins?
So to the position of the CAC, because we also voted on this item, was very much in alignment with Member Brother's motion. There were 177 organizations that came out with an opposed letters on the 538. So if you go the electronic copy and in your packet, there are copies of some of those letters. And as it was pointed out, the building trades and the Sierra Club are on the same side on this one. And so I take special note of that. And so those letters are included in your packets for you to review. And that's there. And we know that it's moved to a 2-year bill today, but that means it can come back as early as January. And so we really do appreciate making sure that that comes back because there's such strong opposition. And we love the idea of the information session.
Great. I appreciate the motion. Having a date certain. Any more comments before we do a roll call vote?
Can I just get a clarification with what we're doing with SB 538?
It's being a watch position is my motion, which means we take no action. We're not gonna appear on the vote this time.
It'll be revisited.
Oh, I guess just clarification, because originally we weren't set to take any position today on 538, right?
Well, it was a watch. It was a watch originally, but the CAC had recommended a position of oppose. And so there was going to be a longer debate probably about it. And what I'm proposing to advance the meeting is that we just do the watch position, but with a very clear understanding that it is a 2-year bill. So the bill, if it undergoes amendments, they have to have those amendments. And it has to be voted out of suspense file by January. I do legislative work for a living. So it has to be off suspense file by January, and that would give them the chance to review it if there's changes.
Because the status of the bill changed.
Well, I got the supplemental agenda item. I guess for my clarification, so whatever the wording may be, but it's to go with staff recommendation, right?
Correct.
Or at least staff.
That's where AB
That's what- okay.
535 is on.
All right, I just, sometimes when we fluff up the motions, that doesn't, it doesn't help in layman's terms, let's be honest. Yeah.
Do you want to repeat your motion just so we're all clear before we vote?
I move to recommend the staff recommendation.
Second.
With the direction that it will go back to the CAC in January before it comes back for us.
AB 538.
530.
And it says Becker here on the first line, it's actually Holden, which is on the second line, so it's recognized.
The bill is recognized as what it is.
Okay, any more questions or comments before we vote?
I just want to clarify the page that I should be looking at. So I was looking at the PowerPoint. Looking at this one, correct?
There was a page.
I'm looking to Director Callis, just get confirmation that we're on the same page, literally.
It's item number 817.
17. And the recommendation, the motion is to adopt the first 3 bullets on item 17.
There was a supplemental that added a new first page that you may have to look at. It's updated.
Yeah, we got it.
Morning supplemental page immediately there.
You're all set.
In that position. So these 2 pages together represent the motion.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarity. There was an update. So roll call vote, please.
Great, thank you. Albany.
Yes.
Berkeley. Berkeley.
Yes.
Dublin. Dublin. Yes. Emeryville.
Yes, sorry.
Great, thank you. Emeryville.
Aye.
Fremont. Hayward.
Yes.
Livermore.
Yes.
Stewart. Yes. Oakland.
Aye.
Piedmont. Aye. San Leandro.
Aye.
Stockton.
Yes.
Tracy.
Yes.
Union City.
Yes.
Pleasanton.
Yes.
And Alameda.
Aye. Thank you. We'll now move on to item number 18.
And I'll take this one really quickly, because I think it's a hopefully relatively non-controversial item. So California Energy Commission, through a process there, created a requirement for, amongst other things, all energy companies, facilities, CCAs, municipal utilities to develop a specific kind of real-time electricity rate. and just sort of as manifested as load management standards. One of the major challenges we find is we do not have access to the right data from PG&E to be able to effectuate these plans. We don't have the billing quality data in the kind of real time that is necessary. And so one of the mechanisms the CEC created was an ability for any entity to go to its board and seek put in place an interim plan that defers compliance until these issues have been dealt with. So we are seeking to defer compliance until PG&E essentially fixes its data, the database and the data feeds that it provides to us to be able to comply. Essentially today, we could not comply if we wanted to. Michael, did I miss anything?
I think you got the gist of it. The technical difficulties that we're sort of facing here are a little bit separate from our lack of real-time billing data, but they're still sort of
There are technical billing issues related to PG&E. Real-time data is one of them. There are others. But if you have any questions, Michael is here to answer specific questions. But essentially, we are seeking to defer compliance, which is this is the formal step we have to take to avoid being found out of compliance and subject to fines. But if the board acts, then the CEC will recognize that action and give us the deferral.
Thank you. Questions? Go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm going to recommend you first. Sorry.
I was going to make a motion, so go ahead. for
Okay,
questions.
questions?
GAC recommendation is to support staff recommendation.
Thank you. Director Bowers?
I didn't have any
No? Anyone else?
Just really quick, is this a time certain where we revisit this?
July 1st to less than 9 months after compliance barriers have been resolved in a manner that allows for cost-effective and technologically feasible CCA compliance. Sort of a contingency.
So it's not a specific date because it can't be a specific date because the barriers are not things that we can control.
I'm just wondering if there's a way that we can make sure that we as a board revisit this in like a year, or 2 years.
Sure.
I think we're happy to revisit it annually.
Okay, so I would add that to the motion.
Okay.
That we approve subject to revisiting in a year.
Okay. Any members that are attending virtual, does anyone have any questions? Okay, any public comments on this item?
There are no hands raised for this item.
Okay, we'll close public comment and entertain a motion. Okay.
All respect staff recommendation with the stipulation that we review it annually.
Second the motion.
Okay, roll call vote.
The second.
Second Bowers.
Albany,
Yes.
Berkeley,
Yes.
Douglas,
Aye.
Emeryville,
Aye.
Devon, Hayward,
Yes.
Livermore,
Yes.
York,
Yes.
Oakland,
Aye.
Piedmont. Aye. San Leandro,
Aye.
Stockton,
Yes.
Tracy. Yes. Union City. Pleasanton,
Aye.
Alameda County.
Aye.
That's the motion.
Thank you. And we have an informational item number 19. This was carried over from last month, so want to be.
I was gonna make a motion to continue to the next one. So maybe I shouldn't, I don't
No,
know.
I'm happy. I just want to be respectful of staff because staff also waited last month. So
I would be presenting.
Okay,
And so
so-
happy to continue the item.
Motion to continue this item to the
Is there
next.
a
meeting.
Okay, I'll call vote to continue.
Madam Chair, as a point where I think you technically need public comments. It's an agenda
Yeah,
item.
okay. Do we have public comment on number 19?
There are no hands raised for this item.
Okay, roll call vote to.
Thank you.
Do we need a roll call vote to continue? Andrew, do we need to vote to continue? I think it's discretion of the chair, so we'll continue the item. And then we'll move on to item number 20, board member and staff announcements, including request to place items on future board agenda items. Do any directors that are attending remote have anything to add to this item? Seeing none, anyone present?
We have a staff member.
Yes.
Hi, yes, thank you. I am in the process of scheduling FAB and MRL meetings. Please look for my email I sent May 1st and fill out the poll so we can actually begin scheduling the meetings. Our chair for the FAB meeting will be Chair Beckers, and then for the MRL, we have Chair Roach.
Thank you for willing to serve in that capacity, and our meeting is adjourned. Next meeting is Wednesday, June 21st. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.